Hey team, welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm stoked to see you, man. I'm super stoked and humbled to have Tom from Prepared Pathfinder here with me. And we wanted to talk a little bit about navigation. I know that's a passion that we both have. And if you want to share a little bit about yourself, he's a badass with some crazy experience.
Oh, thanks, Bill. So I'm obviously from the UK, from England. I served for 25 years in the army in a parachute regiment. About half of that was in the Pathfinders, which is a reconnaissance unit. 7 operational deployments, so Northern Ireland, Kosovo, Macedonia, Iraq and Afghanistan, multiple tours of a couple of those. I then served for another 8 years in the reserves after that, again in the parachute regiment reserves. And yeah, been around quite a bit, done a lot of deployments all around the world, 4,500 jumps. And yeah, just enjoying being in the outdoors. I'm a civilian now, but I teach outdoor skills to people, and I've got my own channel as well, Prepared Pathfinder, where I talk about outdoor skills and kit reviews and shit.
Yeah, awesome, good stuff. Something that we were just talking about was kind of a reliance on electronics and all the technology that's out there, and that's all great stuff. Yeah. But as we know, it all fails. Yeah. Right? So being able to use a map and a compass and just understanding even some steps beyond that, some basic fundamentals of how to move through terrain, whether it's unknown, whether it's known. I know in the US, man, there are thousands of search and rescue operations that are conducted every single year from people getting lost. Yeah,
we get that in the UK as well. Right. An awful lot.
If somebody comes over just to take a selfie, or they walk down a trail or something, then they get injured. Yeah. And now they don't know what to do. They don't know how to get back. And
or the weather comes in.
Right.
Like it just has now.
It's coming in now.
Literally 2 minutes before we got here, it started raining, and it's been beautiful all day. And you know, sometimes the forecast for the weather isn't always that accurate, is it? Right. So you get out on the hills, it could change 100%, especially in mountainous regions like this, and that can lead to some pretty bad circumstances. Right.
It'll also impact your navigational technology equipment that you're using as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I know on the U.S. military side of the house, we spend a lot of time plotting points and using a map and a protractor, but too many times, you know, we're only considering getting to the next point, not connecting that piece of land navigation to a larger picture of patrolling operations, right? And so I found that one of the things, you know, there's 4 fundamentals: know where you are, plan a route, stay on a route, and recognize the objective. If you can do those 4 things, but there's a lot of ins and outs in those 4 things. Of taking a second to look at your map and orient yourself and get your bearings about you with what you see on the map and what you see around you.
Yeah, so being able to orientate yourself using a map and a compass, and then relaying what you can see on the map to the ground and recognise land features, absolute key skill.
Right, and especially here, you know, we've got some overhead footage going on. There are so many micro terrain features that can really jack you up once you start getting down in them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, route selection is another real key skill. Right. So navigating to get from point A to point B, route selection is how you're going to actually walk around that piece of ground to get to point B. Because quite often you can't just follow a bearing straight, because you're going to go through some, you know, you could go off the edge of a cliff. You could walk into a river. You could smash yourself through all this manzanita crap. But you know, the route selection is where you actually take your path through whatever terrain you're going to take to get to your objective, which is a key skill as well.
So what is a skill that you would, you know, advocate of as you're doing that in order to stay on your route?
So being able to interpret the information off a map is a key skill. So being familiar with all the key symbols and actually practicing it in an environment where it's real life, it's not just in a classroom. So you get out there, you need to practice your skill in a practical environment, and be able to recognise features that are marked on the map, relay that to the ground, and then that'll affect you, and you know, it'll enable you, if you can do that, to be able to get from point A to point B effectively without having problems, basically.
Right, so we're thinking about things like ridges, spurs, draws, water features.
Absolutely, yeah. So you know, interpreting the contour lines on a map, which a lot of people can't do. They just look at tracks and trails, which aren't always accurate, you know, as they're supposed to be. You might think, I'm going to follow this trail, and it could go off in a wrong direction, and then if you're just following that, then you're going to possibly go wrong. So being able to interpret the map's contour lines and features, relay that to the ground.
And as you're talking about that, you know, contour lines, something that a lot of people don't consider is You know, if we were going to move in a more of a northerly direction here, it may on paper be a straighter shot to go straight overhead, but there's nothing to keep you from just following a contour line, which keeps a lot of yourself in how am I trying to say this? You're not putting forth as much effort to do that, right?
Yeah, so you're conserving energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is key, especially in military operations,
right,
where you're carrying a lot of gear on your back. And the other thing with the military, if you was, you know, in serving in the military, is you're not just trying to get from point A to point B, you need to do it in a tactical manner as well. Yeah. So you've got to use the ground to your advantage to cover and mask your movement too.
Right, so on that point, you're not going to want to cross over a ridge line, right?
No. Yeah, because that's definitely attracting the wrong kind of attention.
That's right. Yeah, you got to use those military crests.
Yeah.
You know, I found one of the key skills as it relates to navigation and getting from point A to point B, and that point B might be a rally point in between between you and your destination, is to look out about you and see if there are some steering marks. It could be a huge identifiable terrain feature, something that's not going to move. But a lot of times what guys don't do is look behind them, because that steering mark could actually be behind them to keep them on the right path, right?
Yeah, so in the UK we'll call that a reference point.
Yeah.
So something to reference to. So if I was moving in this direction, I'd take my bearing on my compass, I'd see if there was something that lined up with that bearing, and I'd use that as a reference point, so I don't have to keep getting my compass out constantly to check the bearing. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think something else, you know, just as we're chit-chatting, on the schoolhouse, on the school training, the presentations, and then when we go out and execute in the military, we're looking for a 1 meter, you know, grid square point. You're looking for that flagpole, you're looking for that ammo can or whatever it is. In a real life situation, you're probably looking for a significant spur, a draw, could be a larger patrol base. You're not going to miss it if you get close, right? But I think it is good to be able to find those small features that may be hard to see. You have to get right up on it, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
You really got to master your craft in this area. Right, and so one of the things, you know, on the schoolhouse side, again, you know, on the U.S. military, you know, people are going, you know, it could be an NCO academy. Guys are trained to move, you know, 400 and 600 meters. And again, you know, like we talked about earlier, they don't really relate that to the larger picture of conducting patrols. But one of the good things is you want to try to keep it to 600 to 800 meters in those legs, because that is super easy to navigate a shorter distance. And so if you're looking at a larger patrol route, like if we had to move well beyond these farther ridge lines, you really have to break it up, again, not only in the shorter legs, but looking at those terrain features between here and there, right?
Yeah, so you're going to plan your route before you set off. You're going to break your route down into certain legs, and having the shorter legs is going to be more accurate, isn't it? Because the further you go, the more chance there are of you getting your bearings wrong or going off course, basically. So you break it down the shorter legs, keep it nice and accurate, and have those legs at places where you know you're going to be able to use your terrain to your advantage in a tactical manner. Yeah,
you know, on that note, earlier video I did a test to demonstrate that if you move 1,000 meters and you're off, maybe you didn't account for your declination, and it was 15 degrees, which is what it was when I was up in Washington, that's going to put you over 173 meters away from your target at just 1,000 meters.
And that's if you stay accurately on the bearing that's slightly inaccurate. And there's always a propensity to potentially go slightly off, left or right, and the terrain may actually kind of push it.
It could force you that way.
Depending on vegetation, depending on, you know, the hills, the slopes and stuff like that, could potentially take you off that way anyway. So it could potentially be even worse than that in reality. And that 170 odd meters could become 400 meters, which is then
now you're screwed
completely. It's like half a grid square off, you know, nearly.
Which I don't think people understand. Like 400 meters is not that big of an area. However, 400 meters is huge. You know?
Especially, you know, if you're looking at this, look at the area behind us, right? You got all this stuff here. If you was 200 meters away from a point, you wouldn't see it.
Couldn't see it.
Possibly even 100 meters.
Right.
400 meters, you haven't got a chance of seeing what you need to get to.
Right.
So you need to try and be as accurate as you can. And another thing you can do to do that, I don't know if you do this, Bill, is you can aim off slightly as well.
Right, yeah.
So if you're going to a certain point, instead of navigating directly to the point, if you've got something bigger to aim for, say, imagine if you've got an open field and you've got a tree line here, you could aim slightly right, hit the tree line, and then move along the tree line to your point instead of going straight to that corner of a tree line.
Yeah.
Because in the dark, or if the weather's really bad, if you was trying to go straight to that tree line and you went too far left, you could just keep going and never see it.
Yep.
So you can aim off for a certain point and then go to it. Could be a stream, could be a track.
Something you're not going to miss.
Yeah,
right.
a linear feature basically. Yeah, something that's big.
Yeah, so we'll just call it offset here, and it is a great point, because if you can navigate your way to that point and you know you're not going to miss it, then you go from there to your destination, right?
So you're using it as basically a feature to get to first, to then go from there onwards. Yeah.
Right. You know, a lot of times, I know on the civilian side now, I navigate by myself all the time.
Yeah, same.
But you know, when you think about working in a team, now you want to think about having some redundancy in your team.
Yep.
Of having a compass guy, having somebody else managing your pace counter, your distance, and potentially even depending on how large the team is, you could have multiple people doing these things,
so
right?
a check pace with a check
Right.
nav.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah.
You know, because again, as you start getting out somewhere, you know, the error that you're going to have, you know, can be compounded to such a degree where now you're going to assume more risk than you should have, and you didn't even know that you were assuming that risk. So, team, I appreciate you guys, man. It's been a great conversation with you, Tom.
Yeah,
It's not really advanced land navigation. You know, at the end of the day, what we're talking about, it's basic things that too many people, in my experience, just don't get out and do and work on it and to fine tune those skills.
Yeah, and sadly, navigation, basic land navigation, is starting to be a bit of a dying art nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people's reliance on technologies such as phones and GPS, which are great as aids, but if you've only got that and you've got no knowledge of actual navigation, then when those aids fail, you can be screwed. And that's, as you said before, and in the UK, an awful lot, people find themselves in trouble for that main reason nowadays, which is a real shame. So get those basic skills dialed in, work them out, work on the basics first before you move on to just aids, as you know, like your phones, your watches and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tom, man, I appreciate you. Right on.
Thanks, Bill.
Until then,
much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.
And stay prepared.
Good stuff, man.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, bud.
Now, this part will be cut because I have no idea what I'm saying.
This would be on the B-roll.
That's right. Gotcha.